job in London, in Fulham, and became the headmaster of the school about 6 years ago. It was a free school. There was 3 pillars to the school. It was boys, the Christian faith and enterprise. And so I moved my whole family from Cardiff to London to set this school up. It's quite an exciting school, and I'll tell you a bit more about it in a minute. But then about 2 years ago, 2 years into being a headmaster of Fulham Boys School, the government came to us. We've got quite good links with Westminster, and they said, "We like what you're doing, will you set up more schools?" And we said to them, well, we're not interested in building an empire. We don't just want to get schools for the sake of it, but if the right kind of groups and the right type of schools came along, we'd be very happy to spread our brand of education across London and the country. So that's why I'm here tonight in Cambridge. So I'm a Welshman in Fulham, but now looking to set up schools across the country. I just want to say 5 things. I don't want to talk for ages. I'll talk for about a quarter of an hour, and then you can ask me as many questions as you want to. As long as they're really easy, I don't mind at all, all right? But I just want to say 5 things. The first thing is, we're a free school. And what that means is, we're an independent, government-funded school. And we really embrace that freedom and embrace that independence. I wrote a blog, which was printed in the Times Educational Supplement a few months ago, saying why I thought the free school movement would fail. You might find that a bit funny for someone who's ahead of a free school to say that, but I think it's because lots of people now are using the free school movement just to set up more bog standard comprehensive schools. It was never the intention of the free school movement. The intention of the free school movement was to do something different. If you keep doing what you've always done, you'll keep getting what you've always got. So I think the free school movement is about doing something different. I'm not a salesman here tonight, okay? I'm just going to tell you the way it is, and you can decide if you want this sort of school or not. There's definitely a risk involved. When we set up the school, we had no teachers, no building, no kind of sports trophy cabinet, no results. We had nothing, just vision, ethos, and plans. And people came with us. The first year we were undersubscribed, so we take 120 boys in every year group. In our first year we took 90. But then within our second year, we were oversubscribed. So we took 140 boys that year to kind of, and we taught some of them the year above. And now we've got a waiting list in the current year 7 of over 400 boys. So it's very popular now. But it's a risk in the first instance. So that's what a free school is. It's about doing something different, distinctive. It's not just about setting up another school. It's about doing something different. So that's what we are. We're built on 3 pillars. And the first pillar is we believe boys and girls are different, not better or worse, not superior, not inferior, just different. I think people who've done research on the human brain will see that boys and girls are different. Their brains develop at a different tempo. I think if you've ever taught a boy or a girl, you'd agree with me. If you've been a mum or a dad of a boy or a girl, you'd agree with me. If you've ever come across a boy or a girl, you agree with me, all right? Boys and girls are different. And so we try and gear our curriculum and what we do towards boys. And the schools we want to set up, we want to gear them towards boys and girls to bring out the best in boys and girls. And so let me just tell you a little bit about how we do things. We are an academic boys' school. We believe that education is about, or schools are about, giving young people a ticket to get into the next stage in life. The ticket we want to give them in Fulham is that they go to Russell Group and Oxford universities. We don't want to set up schools and be like Costa Coffee, nothing against Costa Coffee, all right? But just, we don't want our schools to look exactly the same wherever you go. So pick up a school in Fulham and drop it in Cambridgeshire. I don't think that will work. Schools work when they come from the local area and they live and breathe the local community. So maybe the ticket that Cambridgeshire needs is very different. That's for the local group to work with us on. But we believe that whatever you do, your curriculum, and being a free school, you can do things a bit differently. You look at what you want an 18-year-old young person to look like, and then you work backwards. And so we think that we want our 18-year-old boy to be Russell Group, Oxford universities, academic curriculum, so you work back. We believe in small classes. So in our school, and we'd like to roll this out with whatever school we set up, there's no more than 24 in a class. And we believe in small classes. We believe in pushing on the most able, so we do a lot of work with differentiation. So our more able pupils, they're part of the Brilliant Club, they do work with Cambridge and Oxford universities, they work with PhD students, so we really want to push them on so they can really kind of, if you like, stretch themselves. But equally, and when Oxford came in, SEN came out as a strength of school, we also want to support those young people who struggle in school and can't access the curriculum. So we do a lot of work, it's mainly in class interventions, but we do a lot of work to kind of support the less able or those with particular learning difficulties. Even though we're a boys' school, we're not a lad school. We call them gentlemen because that's how we want them to behave. And so it's not, sport plays a big part of the school, and I think whatever school we set up, we'd like sport to be a big feature. I think that, we're an academic boys' school. I think there's a correlation between sport and academic success. So we put a lot of emphasis on sport. I think it's good that young people are healthy and fit and active. We put a lot of emphasis on elite teams. So I'm saying things that you might disagree with, but there we are. We've got our rugby teams and football teams are very successful. Only the best 15 boys make it into the first 15. Because that's life, isn't it? I love being a teacher, but I would much prefer to have been outside half of Wales, alright? I just wasn't good enough. But my mother couldn't phone the WRU and say, please give them a game. Can't everyone in Wales just have a little turn? We are rubbish as it is. We'd be even worse if that was the case, alright? So I think there's part to preparing young people for life to say, do you know what? You might get in the first 15, you might not. But we do have A teams and B teams and C teams and D teams and inter-house competitions. But we think that's important to develop elite athletes, but also to find us at least one sport that every young person in our schools can enjoy and take through life. Music and drama are important in our schools. We think that's good for kind of, on one level, just self-confidence, but also it brings the feel-good factor to the school. And we like to think that our young people will end up on the West End and so on and so forth. So singing and acting and drama and dance plays a big part in what we do. We're very strict, and I think that's something that we would run in every school. So if we were opening a school here in Cambridgeshire, we would want those schools to be strict. I think that's important for young people. We're strict on uniform and appearance. We're strict on, we call it appropriate behaviour. So if you came to our schools, we would expect you to find in lessons a buzz of activity. So people asking questions, answering questions. If you came to our assemblies, you'd expect them to be sitting in silence, listening and participating respectfully. At lunch and break time, we'd expect them to be running around and having fun. You wouldn't want to see them just sat down quietly. You'd want to see them enjoying themselves. We take behaviour to and from school seriously. So we like to get feedback about how our boys behave on the underground and on buses and to and from school. We think that's very important. Uniform plays a big part, like I say. We think that they need to look immaculate. We just think little things matter. We say, firm boundaries and strict discipline. But it's not draconian, because when we do lots of reviews, and when the local authority came in, we brought in the safeguarding officer. She said if ever there was a school that she wanted to send her people to look at for where boys are happy and safe and enjoy school, she'd send it to Fulham Boys School. So we think those strict boundaries and firm discipline actually is what makes people feel safe and they know where they are. And don't get me wrong, those boys push those boundaries, alright? But once they know they're not going to move, they relax and feel happy and safe. So we think those things are very important. So in one sense, that's our kind of curriculum and what we do. The second kind of pillar is enterprise. And that runs through everything we do. And it's three strands to that. It's personal enterprise, social enterprise and business enterprise. So in terms of personal enterprise, we want to instill in our young men and young women this need to be a problem solver, a risk taker, have a can-do attitude. They never know when they're beaten, they never lie down, they never give up, they never know when the game's over, they just keep going and going and going. We want them to be able to work with other people. We want them to question and think and challenge everything, not just take things on face value, but really critically analyse things. We think those are really important skills and characteristics. I don't know, and I'm sure if there's education here tonight, they can tell you this, that we don't really know what A-levels will look like in 10 years' time, or what GCSEs will look like in 10 years' time, but I do know that currency of the future is resilience, being able to work as part of a team, having a good character, being a problem solver. They are things that young people need definitely in the next 10, 20 years when they go into the world of work. And that's what we're trying to pump in and instill into our young people. We make the most of London as our classroom, and we would expect in this area to make the most of Cambridge as your classroom. So to give young people the opportunity to go out into the city and the surrounding areas and learn from it. We run an extended school day, so our pupils come to school at 8:30 in the morning, they leave at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, apart from on a Friday. That's just for all our sakes. But they do lessons sometimes till 3 o'clock, other days till 4 o'clock, and then they do 4 clubs a week. We call them co-curriculum clubs, and we run about 100 throughout the year. Teachers run them, we bring in other people to run them, and that's to kind of give them different experiences of different things. They can be academic, they can be sport, they can be kind of creative, but we want them to experience other things to kind of build their confidence, find interests, and really to make them enjoy school. So if you ask our boys, what is the worst thing about school? They'll say, being in school till 5 o'clock. What's the best thing about school? The clubs that run till 5 o'clock. All right? So we think those things are important. And I think that if you came to our schools, you're very welcome to do. If you want a day trip to Fulham, you're very welcome to come. You would see boys who are quite happy and quite enjoy school. They're not always the hardest working boys. They can be a bit nuisances, but they actually have got a good attitude towards school. So we think enterprise, that kind of personal enterprise, is very, very important. We put emphasis on social enterprise. I'm sure in this area, like in Fulham, lots of our young people are very privileged. And we don't want our school to be that school where people think, oh, that school. We want it to be at the heartbeat of the community. So our boys do a lot of social enterprise. They visit old people on some of the local estates. They have a cup of tea with them, they do their shopping, they just have a chat with them. Just so that they're giving a bit back to the community. We sleep out to empathise with the homeless. We cook for the homeless. They go to some local nursing homes to push the wheelchairs around, to give people a little bit of a day out. We want our boys to give back to society and to have that kind of community feel about them. We took them a few years ago to the Calais jungle to play football against the refugees and to talk to some of those refugees and to try and get them to think about how they would sort that problem out. So we're trying to make them, if you like, socially responsible young people. And again, we would like that to run through all the schools that we open. We put emphasis on business enterprise. We want them to be financially literate, so they know how money works. Because again, I think that if you're going to grow up in modern Britain, then those things are important too. I think the third pillar is the Christian faith. And you might say, what does that mean? On one level, it's Christian values. So it's about being kind, about being respectful, about having a no-nonsense approach to bullying, about working hard, standing up for justice, being forgiving. But I would argue that any head teacher in any school in the country will tell you that that is what they want in their schools too. I don't know any head who's ever said, you know, we're not that hot on standing up for justice, or we don't really think it's that important to work hard. That's ridiculous, everyone's doing that. So while that is something that we pump into our boys and our teachers about Christian values, it also means we expose our young people to the Bible, we do, to the claim of Jesus Christ, but we say to them, now question it, challenge it, disagree with it, reject it. It's not brainwashing or indoctrination, quite the opposite. We're saying, think about these things. But I want to live in a society, all right, where people are allowed to have strong views, but can live alongside people with completely different views to them. And I don't really want to live in a society where we just tolerate each other. If I went back to London tonight now, and I get home and my wife, if she's still up, she makes me a cup of tea, and I say, do you know what, I really tolerate you. I don't think she's going to be best pleased with me, all right? Because she wants me to love her. And so what we're trying to do in our school, and in every school we set up, is we want to try and get these young people to actually genuinely like and love each other. But not dumb everything down so we all have to agree on something, which is a bit puny and insipid and pathetic. But to have strong opinions, to hold them strongly, to say, I actually disagree with you, to try and convince somebody else of your opinion. All that is fine, isn't it? But you do it through kindness and respect, through reason and sense, not through fear and force or the bullet of a gun. That is what we're trying to create. So that's where we come from really with the Christian values. I wrote an article which ended up in the Daily Mail. I was pretty devastated it ended up in the Daily Mail, that's another story, alright? It was called Muscular Liberalism as a Bully. And the head of Ofsted, who I have respect for, she'd said that she wanted to face down extremism in schools. She was going to do that by using muscular liberalism. I wrote this article and said, I agree with Ms. Spearman that there's no place for extremism in schools. But equally, there's no place for muscular liberalism. Because muscular liberalism isn't liberalism. It's forcing people to think liberally. Liberalism is you can think what you want. And that's what we're trying to do in all the schools we set up, that you can think what you want, if you can back it up with reason and sense and kindness. So that's what we're about. The last thing I'll say, then you can fire questions at me, is if you ask me what I think our unique selling point is, I would say that we're a truly comprehensive school. And I think that's very, very important. 15% of our young people are Black Caribbean. 13% are Black African. Nearly 10% are Asian. 20% come from private school backgrounds. We've got 3 boys in year 9 now who've got places in Eton they've turned down to stay with us. They turned down places in Marlborough, in St Paul's, in all these top independent schools to come to Fulham Boys School. We're quite proud of that. But alongside them, you've got 40% from social deprivation. And if you were to come to our school, we would like to think that you wouldn't know which is which. So you wouldn't know the boy whose mother and father earn £6-7 million a year, and you wouldn't know the boy whose father is a gang leader on one of the London estates. You wouldn't have a clue, because they all look the same. They've all got access to the same opportunities, the same teaching, the same co-curriculum, clubs, and they're meeting the same standards. Some need more help than others, but they're all meeting the same standards. That's why I came into education. I'm a free school meal boy, right, from the Welsh Valleys. I'm in Fulham. I think education is transformational. And I think a lot of these private schools are missing a trick because they're fishing from a very small pond. And I would say that some of the most talented people I have ever met have been on the top of the Rhondda Valley, on the back streets of Blaenau Gwent, but they'll never get to these top independent schools. What we're trying to do, and what we'd like to do across the country now, is to give all young people the access to the same opportunities. But you need both sides of the spectrum. Because if you come to our school, you've got 2 young men in the class, they're sat next to each other. The one boy, since he's been 1 year of age, has been told, my son, one day you will go to Oxford University. He's sat next to a boy who doesn't even know where Oxford is. He's never been further than 3 streets on the North End Road in Fulham. But he looks at his work and thinks, hang on a minute, mate, if you can go to Oxford, so can I. So it builds their aspirations. And this boy, who's had everything put on a plate for him, looks at this boy and thinks, actually, you were all right. Your character's all right. And so it gets rid of all that kind of, preconceptions and prejudice and so on and so forth. The other thing I'd say, and I will close with this, is we want our schools to be cooperatives. I think that's what makes it a success. If you come to our school and you look on the wall and with all the teachers' pictures, you haven't got me on the top as the head. It's in alphabetical order because it's all our school. And to make a successful school, I think you need 4 strands. You need really outstanding governors who hold the school to account and are actively involved. You need outstanding teachers. I am the least important person in Fulham Boys School. The ones who make a difference. I never mark books. I never plan lessons. I never do Saturday rugby fixtures. I never run school trips. The teachers do that. They're the most important. They have the most impact. And so to have outstanding schools, and this is where we put a huge emphasis on recruitment and retainment in all our schools, you have to have outstanding teachers. They play a big part. The pupils play a big part. I can see some young people here. I don't really mind about naughty children. I think they're quite nice, actually. They're quite good fun. I just think attitude's important. So I can tell you there's boys in our school, they can be pains in the neck, they can have little scuffles on the rugby pitch, they can forget their own work, they can do all sorts of things. But as long as their attitude's important, we put a lot of emphasis on attitude, having the right attitude. And so all our pupils have to buy into what we're doing. And the fourth strand, I would say, is the parents. We expect a lot from our parents. They have to sign an agreement saying how they'll support the school, whether that is helping out financially if they can. Some of our parents are saving £30,000 a year by not going private, so we say to them, can we have some of that 30,000 basically? And they very generously do. And then we say, can we have some of your time? So some of our parents help out in the school day. Can we have some of your skills? We run these co-curricular clubs. Can you come and help run these clubs? And we also say to them, as in London, is quite near lots of different places, can we have your address book? Because they know famous people and they bring the famous people in. That's the way it works. I've got a headmaster's coffee morning now on Wednesday morning where 40 or 50 people will come in and tell me how they could run the school better and what a terrible job I'm doing. But I quite like it because it's their school. And sometimes I have to say, do you know what, you need to stop listening to your child because he's got it wrong. Other times I say, do you know what, you've got a good point there, we need to change that. So I think parents are very important. We talk in parent-friendly language. We don't use a lot of education speak. So, again, on school reports, we wouldn't say your child is doing, his progress is satisfactory. Because satisfactory doesn't mean satisfactory, does it? Again, if I went home tonight and my wife came down and she said, what do you think of my new dress? And I say, you look satisfactory. I'm definitely not in the good books, all right? So we try and use we try and get rid of educational jargon, and we want our parents heavily involved in the school. So that's the Fulham Boys School. Like I say, we believe boys and girls are different. We put emphasis on enterprise, we're built on the Christian faith, we're truly comprehensive, and we're a free school. So we've got that independence. We do work well with the local authority, we think that's important, we've got a good relationship with the local authority, but we do also embrace our independence. Why I'm here tonight is because obviously you've got Cornerstone who are proposing to set up a school. We think the local group is really strong and know what they're doing. And so we are more than happy to put our name to it and to help and support them. We will do a lot of the work in terms of putting out the schemes of work and the plans and the policies which they can adapt and, if you like, put it in local clothes. But that's why we're here tonight. And if you've got any questions, fire away. As long as it's not about the local area, because I don't know the local area. Right?
What prompted you